Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 15 January 2021. In this video, we'll be discussing this couple of issues. This article, Recapitalization of State-Owned Banks, Privatization Should Do It. This is in the context of how to deal with the problem of non-performing assets in the time of pandemic. Just to give a brief background, non performing assets is a major problem of the banking sector, and this has been recognized after Raghuram Rajan, the ex RBI governor, has tried to bring this issue to the fore and at the same time created a framework wherein banks come up with certain parameters to recognize when a particular asset or a loan will become a non performing asset. In its simplest format, non performing asset means a asset that is not yielding a return. For banks, loans are the products which yield returns. So they are assets to the banks. So if a customer fails to pay back this loan, it will become a non-performing asset. So this is the simplest funda. Now in this situation, we also have to understand the capital requirement. Say for every loan that a bank is processing, it requires certain manpower. This manpower, whether uh, the bank is getting profits from the loans or not, should continue, because the bank will have a certain component of money that is required for running the bank through manpower, administrative costs, etc., etc. It cannot depend on just the profits alone. Keeping this insight, and to the 2008 financial crisis, which has led to the collapse of many huge banks because they did not even have necessary capital requirements that were enough to give salaries to their manpower and other administrative costs. So, in the backdrop of this, Basel norms were created, Basel 3 norms were created, and it was decided that for certain risked assets, at least 9% of the capital should be there. So, this is called the capital adequacy ratio. So this percentage is considered to be the threshold. It doesn't mean that the bank should have just 9%. It is always better to have a higher capital. And it is in this context we are talking about in this article. In the time of pandemic, obviously the non-performing assets would slightly increase. We traditionally have this problem of non-performing assets, and it is only going to get worse in the pandemic. In the wake of this realization and the latest financial stability report that RBI comes up with, it was recognized that this percentage of non-performing assets will actually increase in the longer run, considering the slowdown in the economy. So the major issue is this non-performing assets will require the banks to come up with more capital. Now, how do you get this capital? Recapitalization should happen. So this recapitalization will happen either through the government recapitalization, through budget allocation, or through bonds. So that is budget or recap bonds. The other route suggested by this article is by going the private way. We have to privatize the public sector banks because a lot of public sector banks are actually failing. Now, in this context, you also have to remember a recommendation made by the working group of RBI to come up with more number of banks. Ideally, the more number of banks we have, the higher is the competition and therefore the efficiency. This is the market principle involving competition. So this is at the heart of the idea of creative destruction, wherein an efficient firm replaces an inefficient one and resource allocation happens to the efficient firm. So this is the basic idea, and to incorporate this, the working committee of RBI has recommended that corporates should be allowed to set up banks, and the norms should be stringent enough to ensure that they don't abuse their dominant position. Now, this phrase called dominant position is a very important one with respect to the principle of competition, in a market. In a market economy, imagine a player like Amazon. Amazon has access to web services. It is a data analytics company as well. It it has access to huge amount of data. At the same time, if it also has a monopoly over e-commerce, it would actually dictate the choices to a consumer, and there is every possibility that to take the leverage of its advantage, it might abuse the dominant position in the market. So dominant position means a particular stakeholder in the entire ecosystem has access to those kind of resources where normal companies which are just starting up will not have. That is to say, a huge fish will be eating the small fish, and it is not in the best interest of the consumer, and therefore the government must work in the favor of people. So protecting these ideas is very important, and letting companies flourish is equally important. So market competition is a reality only when we have government playing the role of a proper regulator to ensure that the larger companies don't actually misutilize the dominant position they have. And at the same time, it should act as an enabler. It should act as an enabler for ensuring rule of law takes place and all the services required for new ideas and startups to flourish. Similar is the case for even banking industry. Just because there is a fear that corporates might use their strategic advantage in the market and divert the funds to their own companies, sister companies, and shadow companies, this idea of corporate banks has been heavily criticized by a lot of stakeholders, including former finance ministers. What are the risks associated with these corporate banks? Firstly, when corporates are involved, they take high risks because they have the forbearance to undergo that huge stress whenever they take these decisions, because they always play this high risk high reward game. But when this risk fails, the money at stake is not just corporates but also the depositors, who can be middle class or people of working age population who strive hard every single day to save every penny. So that will be at risk. So that is the moral imperative. Second one is the one which we have already discussed. Connected lending is a possibility because, say, imagine a bank X has 7 or 8 sister companies under it, or shadow companies which are not registered directly under the brand X, but they are associated with the brand. Now if any of the firm fails, the exposure of that particular bank to this failure will be huge. So what kind of norms will be set is not clearly discussed. And anyway, this idea was not at all encouraged because uh, a lot of ex RBI governors believed that companies will still find a way to take advantage of this loophole. The third one is a major issue, that is information asymmetry. Whenever market takes a decision, it is based on the transparent announcements made by a company, and based on that only they will be taking decisions and it will influence the market. But if insider trading is happening, it will distort the market because a few individuals will have access to that kind of information which will potentially change the company. Say for example, if a telecom company was not aware that a player like Jio would be entering into the market, they would not understand the exact impact of that on their shares. At the same time, if someone has actually leaked that information way beyond the announcement was made, then it would amount to insider trading because it would distort the market. Next thing is concentration of power. We have just spoken about monopolies and how they will affect consumer behavior. So this concentration of power is the major issue. Citing all these factors, the government has been advised not to go for corporate banking. So, what is the alternate option? Because when we're talking about recapitalization, there is a moral imperative that we are using the hard earned tax money for recapitalizing the banks which have bad loans by many fugitive economic offenders. So this is a moral imperative. On the other hand, we don't have enough money also for practical reasons. So the way forward is to go through a privatization mode. Now when I say privatization, it doesn't mean that we are trying to completely get uh, private management into the company by selling the stake. What we are actually suggesting here is private recapitalization of banks. Banks should actually go out to the market and seek more equity. So this will have some success provided banks do certain steps first. Firstly, certain bank balances and bank balance sheets should be cleared. That is to say, the bad loans should be written off, or they should be set aside, or the idea of bad bank should be mooted. As much as possible, recovery should happen through institutions like insolvency and bankruptcy code, or it can even reduce the government ownership to less than 50%. That will usher in a era where market forces will actually take care of the issues that banking sector is facing. So that is the gist of this article. Ham some gains. So we know that investment in infrastructure builds capital stock that is needed for economic development. Given the fact that our government does not have enough resources for investment into infrastructure, we have created the infrastructure pipeline, the national infrastructure pipeline, and this will channelize investments into particular sectors. So the major form of funding for this is the PPP model. Now, when we are talking about the investment models, HAM or the hybrid annuity model is one of the most important model that has been benefiting the government as well as the stakeholders involved in this entire transaction. So, whenever we are talking about the public private partnerships, we have to talk about the 4 R's that are involved in the success or failure of a PPP model. Basically, we're talking about resources and how they are allocated. Second one is the amount of risks. Are they evenly distributed or it is skewed? What is the incentive for taking more risk? This will decide the success or failure. The third thing is responsibility. Is the responsibility in tandem with the power that they have and the control they have over resources? And finally, what is the reward structure? How are they aligned with the interests of the stakeholders? So the government of India has identified PPP as a way of developing the country's infrastructure from 2000s itself. However, it is only in the recent times, because of recent updates like the hybrid annuity model in the past 5 years, that we are witnessing certain growth. So, to exactly capture the fundamental philosophy behind this PPP model, we have to take a look at the Kelkar Committee report. The Kelkar Committee report in 2016 said that the public private partnership can be defined as a model where the public asset will be held by the government and the service will be given by a private partner who will be given the right for the purpose for a specified period of time and on the basis of market transactions. So that is to say, they will have proper resource allocation for a particular period of time and the responsibility of ensuring everything that they need to carry out their functions properly. Like, say for example, take the example of Hyderabad Metro Rail. This is considered to be the largest PPP project in our country. In this project, L&T was given the responsibility to construct and operate for a certain period of time. And in return, the state government has accepted the responsibility of land acquisition, procuring the land, and giving it to the company. So the risks involved are minimized in this case. That is the reason why this model has seen a success. And the reward structure is that the government has given autonomy to the Hyderabad Metro Rail to decide the pricing between a spectrum. So this ensures that the reward structure is rightly designed. So if all these are taken care, public-private partnerships will definitely be a successful model. And in this case, let us talk about the hybrid annuity model and how it has been a success. So basically, this hybrid annuity model was introduced in 2016. Majorly, this was introduced in road infrastructure projects which were awarded by the National Highway Authority of India, or NHAI. So in this model, 40% of the capital cost quoted is paid directly by the government upfront. 60% of the amount will be paid uh, over the life of the project as annuities, that is annually, or in a particular time frame that is written in the agreement. Basically it is annual, so therefore it is called annuity. So this component is the annuity, and since only 60% of it is through annuity and 40% is paid upfront, this is a hybrid model, hybrid annuity model, hence the name. What was the need for creating this model? To understand this, we have to understand another investment model called the built operate transfer model, or BOT. Along with this BOT, there is another version called the built own operate transfer, or BOOT. Both these are methods of financing a infrastructure project through private companies. So what is the model here? Let us understand this. But before getting into details of this, let us understand what a concession agreement means. So, concession agreement is like a grant of rights, land, property by whom? By the government. Generally, when we are talking about a concession agreement, and not just the PPP model, it is nothing but giving permission of the rights over a land or a property to either an individual or a corporation or an entity for a defined amount of time as per the agreement to do a particular activity. So let me give an example. Let us go back to the Hyderabad Metro Rail example. We are not getting into the specific details of the agreement, but just to quote an example, the state government of Telangana has given the rights over the entire land and also the construction done by L&T with respect to Hyderabad Metro Rail for a defined amount of period. So in this transaction, the corporation that we're talking about is L&T. So L&T will have certain rights for a defined amount of period to collect the amount it deems appropriate. Say if it invests around 15,000 crores, it has to recover the entire amount and make a profit and move out of it after it makes a profit and transfer the ownership to the government. So this is what built operate transfer means. But when we are talking about the road projects and especially the highway projects, BOT has proven to be a disaster for a lot of infrastructure companies. They estimated a certain amount of traffic, and they estimated that they will get toll collections, they will make a profit in a span of say 15 years, and then they thought that they can exit. But that never really happened because there was no traffic, and even after the entire period was over, they were not able to recover their money, leading to a loss. So a lot of delays also happened in the process because of land acquisition, fights with the locals, and there was a lot of trouble in changing the routes of the highways as well because of this land acquisition and political problems. So lot of companies decided to not opt for this model, and highway construction projects were stalled because of lack of money from the government side. And even the banks were also not really keen on giving projects funding for these companies because of these issues, because they were not in a position to pay back that money. Rise of NPAs has been spiraling into a economic disaster, and therefore in order to revive the economy, the government has created this innovation where they'll 40% of the money will be paid by the government upfront, which will make the financing easy, and the 60% upon completion they will get it back. Now, what is the incentive for the government to have this? infrastructure creation has a multiplier effect. Whenever there is infrastructure created, there will be better jobs. Whenever there is infrastructure created, there will be overall development of human life. The quality of human life is much better in that area. So this 40% invested by the government will have multiple returns in the form of both human capital as well as social capital. At the same time, economic growth will also be triggered by this investment. So it is a win-win situation for all. Now, coming back to the present issue that is discussed in this article, the article talks about how ham has proven to be a success and yet pointed out a couple of issues which needs course correction. Firstly, in the time of pandemic, bank rates have significantly fallen down. Yet, the monetary policy transmission is very slow, and this has been a problem for a lot of companies that are seeking some sort of financial help by raising capital, etc. So, even in the time of this economic slowdown, if the monetary policy transmission is very slow, it will only hamper the growth, because infrastructure projects will become very cost effective in these times of pandemic where the RBI rate has been very low. So this anomaly must be corrected, and we have to create certain conditions that are conducive for the private players to borrow more money and carry out these projects. So that is the gist of this article.